Conversation with the Candidate continues.
And thank you for clicking on our extended digital conversation with the candidate with entrepreneur Andrew Yang. We've got 30 minutes commercial free here. Going to be able to get to all sorts of issues. So let's start out with our first question from Richard Savory.
Hi, Mr. Yang. My dad and my family grew up as Kennedy Democrats. And nowadays we look at all the candidates and we wonder, where have the Democrats gone? Because now all you see is a bunch of socialists that have infiltrated them. So where are the Democrats that are voting, for America and working for America?
I was in Iowa with a trucker named Dennis Bagaski, and he asked me a similar question. And he said, why is it that it doesn't seem like the Democrats have been with the working class, people like him? And that's his perception. But I got the same perception from union workers here in New Hampshire, where they said, where have the Democrats gone? And to me, the Democrats need to have the backs of the working people of this country. And if that happens again, then that's going to be transformative for the party. The fact that that has changed is, to me, the big missing piece. And we need to take that back so that you feel like the Democrats have your back, sir.
Why do you think that has changed, though, over the last few decades?
I think that there's been this movement in the party to become this more urban party, and then the urban party has sort of adopted various cultural issues as opposed to economic and bread and butter issues. We also, I think the Democratic Party has become too trusting in institutions and not trusting enough of people. And so, for example, if you're to talk to a Democrat about how to fix schools, it would be like, oh, let's invest in technology for the schools, when really the best thing you could do is pay the teachers more and then put more money into the hands of the families and give the kids a chance to learn. So unfortunately, the Democratic solutions have been less and less compelling to people because people have lost confidence in this array of programs, and the Democrat solution is let's create a new program. And what I'm suggesting is it's not about a new program. We just need to get resources into the hands of parents and families and teachers and schools. And that's going to be a better approach. And I think that's what the Democratic Party has been missing for a long time.
Is not universal basic income, though, kind of socialism by other means?
It's very much not. It's capitalism where income doesn't start at zero. And we're at a point now as a country, we're up to $20 trillion in GDP. We're the richest and most advanced economy in the history of the world. But most people in New Hampshire and most people around the country are not experiencing that. 78% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck. 57% can't afford an unexpected $500 bill. And so we need to start evolving the way our economy distributes all this incredible bounty. Because I have been where the bounty is actually being concentrated. And there's so much value being created that we can easily do this for the American people. It would just make communities and families stronger very quickly. It would build a trickle-up economy from people, families, and communities up. And that's what we need. That's what the Democratic Party needs.
Okay, next question from Caroline Kelly.
Hi. A lot of the conversation today has been about how technology is changing the workforce. So my question is, how do you plan to prepare Americans for the future workforce needs?
Yes. So right now we are over-prescribing college. The big missing piece is vocational, technical, and apprenticeship training from high school up. Right now, only 6% of American high school students are in technical or apprenticeship programs. In Germany, that percentage is 59%. And that gulf reflects millions of unfilled jobs that are going to be resistant to automation, because it's very hard to automate air conditioning repair or plumbing or much line repair. It's easy to automate bookkeeping, accounting, and a lot of the entry-level white-collar tasks, insurance, agent, actuary. And so we need to dramatically channel more of our resources towards technical and vocational trades that are going to be with us for a long time. They're good, solid jobs that people enjoy, and that's where we need to channel many more Americans.
Thank you, Caroline. Another social media question here, this one from Patrick Collis. He says, how about pay off the deficit, then mandate a balanced budget? What do you think of that?
Well, 40 out of 50 states have a balanced budget amendment. That's one reason why I'm running for president, is to be able to make these kind of moves. You need the federal budget, the heft. Now, we are, again, the richest country in the history of the world, and we are also the global reserve currency. We can make moves to benefit the American people, and that's what we should do. Now, running this massive deficit is not a good thing, and we should try and bring it down in various ways. But a balanced budget would be the wrong way to go for the federal government that's trying to solve problems for the American people, in my opinion. I would bring the deficit down. I'm concerned about the deficit, but a balanced budget would be a goal that would probably do more harm in the short run than good.
So to bring the deficit down, what would you cut?
Well, one of the things I would do is I would channel some of our military spending towards infrastructure. Because right now we're spending $750 billion that we know of on military defense, and a lot of that money is not going towards the true threats of today. The threats of the 21st century are, in some order, climate change, cybersecurity, AI, loose nuclear materials, and having more and more aircraft carriers and equipment doesn't necessarily protect us against that. The reality is right now China and Russia could probably shut down our power plants by hacking our infrastructure through various code that they've planted. So that's actually the danger of the 21st century. It's not that they're going to somehow parachute troops in or something along those lines. So we need to take the money we're spending on military defense and start channeling it towards something that would generate economic activity and also be very, very needed for years to come because our infrastructure is falling apart. We're living on investments from decades ago.
Next question in the town hall format comes from Gail Taylor.
Hi. Would you support overturning Citizens United?
Very much so. That was the worst decision ever. So we need to overturn it. Unfortunately, you need a constitutional amendment to overturn it the way that it's been set up, but that would very much be the goal. And then in addition to that, I'd pass those democracy dollars, which has the effect of overrunning the corporate money that Citizens United unleashed on us. But I thought that was a bad decision when it was made, and that's been proven.
I think just about every voter here probably is interested in the Supreme Court and what happens in that branch of our government. If you're the President of the United States, what are you looking for in a potential Supreme Court justice nominee?
Well, I will say I think that Democrats generally like to play fair and have respect for process. And what the Republicans did by sandbagging Merrick Garland in the last year of Obama's presidency, to me, was unprecedented. Like, there's nothing in the Constitution that says in the last year of our presidency you can't appoint a Supreme Court justice, and that ended up tipping the balance of the court in a very, very real way. So at this point, you have to try and undo some of what has been done. I'd be looking for a justice that has views that align with the Democratic Party in terms of moving society forward, and I think, unfortunately, that some of the justices that have been appointed recently are going to pull us the other way in terms of reproductive rights and other things.
So you think it's time to take a more nakedly political approach then? You want to know what your justice believes before you put them up?
I went to law school. I took constitutional law. I understand the legal backdrop of the Supreme Court. But I would appoint a justice that is aligned with the values of the people that voted me into office.
And one last question on that front. Sorry to take some time for you guys. But the idea that so many of the members of the Supreme Court are from the same academic institutions and the same background. Is it time to find justices with a more varied experience or education?
And again, I want to affirm that literally they're picking justices based upon their youth so they'd stick around for more years. The whole thing is so perverse. So we need to move to 18-year terms, and then every president would have 2 appointments if you had 9 justices, and that's like a steady system that we can all rely on. So in terms of institutions, sure, I think relying upon academic pedigree at this point, like if you look at our history, some of the best justices did not go to the same schools as we're pulling from right now.
Okay, next question, Susan Ingram Kelly.
Yes. Hello. In this time of what appears to be extremism in both parties, what would you suggest can be done to bring a spirit of compromise and civility back to the political process?
So one of the things I've been saying to the American people is that we've been distracted by a lot of things, and we need to focus on solutions and ways that we can actually improve people's lives. That's one reason why the freedom dividend, giving everyone $1,000 a month, is the centerpiece of my plan, because that's very bipartisan. It's not left or right, it's forward. Everyone from Martin Luther King to Milton Friedman to Richard Nixon was for it. So then after we do this, then the big hope is that we can reverse the mindset of scarcity that has overtaken our communities. One reason we're so polarized is that Americans are not doing well. If you can't pay your bills, it's much easier to become negative about other types of people. So if we get the economic boot off of people's throats and reverse this mindset of scarcity, which has overtaken our country, and replace it with a mindset of abundance and optimism and generosity, then hopefully we can bring the American people together around policies that we can all agree on.
Thank you, Susan. And I'm curious too, what do you do when you get that blast of negativity on social media? So you tweet something about policy, and then whether it's bots or real people coming at you, how do you deal with that wave of negativity?
Well, in my case, any negativity is a good thing, just because it means that people are digging into the proposals that I have for the economy and the American people. And I'm the sort, I don't know if you can tell, but I'm not the sort that expects everyone to agree with me. You know, like if people come to me with quality arguments and facts, I'm very, very open to considering them. Now, if they're just spouting things that are not factual, and it just seems like, you know, hostility for the sake of hostility, then it's very easy just to put aside and ignore anyway.
I'm going to do another.
But I will say, I have to say, like, I'm not getting much hostility at all. Like, the love outweighs the hostility is something like 100 to 1. If you go on my social media following, you'll see what I mean. But again, we've raised $500,000 from everyday Americans in the last, 2 weeks. So there's a lot of enthusiasm for this vision of the economy. And the negativity, frankly, I haven't seen much of it.
We're going to do another social media question here.
And I've been on Fox 4 times. 5. I can't even keep track.
Kat McAfee asks, should the government require the NCAA to pay athletes?
100% yes. Oh my gosh. If you go to my website, yang2020.com, you'll see I have 76 policies, like ban robocalling, get a psychologist in the White House, forgive student loans, and pay NCAA athletes, because it is wrong to exploit young people that are making millions of dollars for an institution. Meanwhile, you're paying the athletic director and the coach hundreds of thousands of dollars and millions of dollars. What kind of message is that for our young people? That it's okay for us to exploit young people for their gifts that are taking risks for their bodies? So NCAA should 100% pay revenue-generating athletes. At a minimum, they should be able to sign memorabilia and get their fair share of merchandise and their likeness and everything else.
So the revenue-generating athletes, not necessarily if I'm on the club soccer team or something like that.
Were you on the club soccer team?
I'm just wondering, guys.
Yeah, it'd be revenue-generating athletes, because if you're playing in like a giant sold-out arena, and then people are paying lots of money, and then the school's making tons of money, it doesn't make sense for the students just to be like scraping by.
And that would be on top of the UBI as well.
Yeah, it would, because if you're getting this universal basic income, and if you have children, it's like, why is school so expensive now? Like why are you looking up being like, how the heck did that happen? So I'm going to try and bring those costs down by tying the cost ratio to federal loan access, but also putting $1,000 a month into your hands and the hands of your children will make a huge difference for paying for school. So if someone shows up to college, they'd be getting this universal basic income. Most of that would be going to tuition, but certainly if they're a revenue-generating athlete, they should be getting compensated.
Okay, let's migrate back to the middle here. We somehow ended up in the corner.
I'm cornering Adam.
Let's go to Clara Monier for a question.
Yes.
I'll move closer to you.
Okay. Good morning, Mr. Wang. Thank you for bringing your interesting proposals to us here in New Hampshire. I am interested in what your proposals are for the Social Security system. It has been predicted to be minus 25% in 2035, and if some changes are made now, maybe the crisis could be averted, and listening to your ideas would be very interesting.
Yes. So Social Security is scheduled to go bankrupt in a number of years, but the truth is Social Security's bankruptcy is essentially an accounting fiction. It's because the way they set it up is that you put money aside and then you get back your money. But the truth is the money you've been putting in has been going to other things, and then new money is going to come in. And the way Social Security gets financed through your work, if you were a mother and didn't build up a work history, then your Social Security benefits are lower. And so that's like part of the way the system is set up. So I would dramatically strengthen and revamp the Social Security system. You would have no fear of it going bankrupt ever again, because we have to decide what kind of country we're going to be. We all know millions of Americans don't have adequate retirement savings, and we are now heading into an era where we're going to see elderly Americans working at convenience stores until the day they die and dying on the streets, or we're going to get our acts together and say we're a moral country, and if you are a citizen of this country and you're past a certain age, you should be getting enough so you can live in a dignified and quality retirement. And again, $1,000 a month would go a very long way for Americans the entire way up. But Social Security, the entire bankruptcy of Social Security is something that we can just come together and change if we decide to do so.
Thank you.
Clara, thank
I
you.
have parents too. Put it that way. I have parents too. My parents are still alive, thank goodness. And so, you know, like having elderly Americans struggling to that degree is immoral.
Your website has probably more policy positions than most. Let's put it that way. To be fair, I think what 75 to 100 or something.
Yes, and there are some new ones coming.
Oh well. One of the interesting ones that caught my eye was this idea of doing something about malls that have become defunct.
Yes.
Can you explain what you'd like to do with America's many emptying malls?
Yes. So 30% of American malls are scheduled to close in the next 5 years. How many of you have been at a ghost mall or a mall that's emptying out? And it's freaky, right? It's scary. Like you don't want to be there. It seems like a crime zone. And when those things go empty, they spread blight for miles around and depress property values. So as these malls close, it behooves us to try and find a creative use for them if we can. And it's happened in some parts of the country where they're getting used as churches, as community spaces, as offices, sometimes as residential. They're poorly designed for some of these things, but you can make moves in this direction. And so as president, I will pass the American Mall Act that will match funds so that if a community has a creative use for that mall, then they'll get backing from the government to help make that transition. Because if you can revive that mall, it's a huge value savings for that community. If that mall goes dark, then the blight will spread. And we have to be honest that this is happening to almost a third of American malls in the next 5 years. Because of what? Amazon, that's right.
The cardboard box industry is doing very well, though. You say you want to bring down overdose and numbers and opioid addiction
Yes.
by 20%. Over a very short time period, just 4 years.
Yep.
How do you achieve that goal when we know that addiction is so tough to beat?
So there's an American idea that you can't treat drugs with drugs, and it turns out that at least in some countries, they have been providing non-addictive drug substitutes for opiates, and it has lowered overdoses and addiction rates. France, for example, lowered its heroin overdose rate by 79% over 4 years by making a non-addictive drug substitute freely available. So that's what we would do here in the US. Not just the entire Naxalone Narcan suite of overdose prevention, but actual substitutes to help people manage the addiction. Now, because there is no right way to get off of drugs, like we have to make every tool available to people, and we certainly shouldn't leave anything off the table, including non-addictive drug substitutes.
And one other thing that's on the website, and you mentioned that in here, is you want to have a psychologist in the White House. What role does this person play? Obviously, there's a pretty clear one medically, but in terms of how the president would make decisions.
Well, so my president's a psychology professor, and I'm sorry, my brother is a psychology professor. My president is very much not. My president's sort of the opposite, unfortunately. So my older brother's a psychology professor at NYU, and we know that people in government are under a lot of stress, making very important decisions, and mental health is going to be sort of the last thing on people's minds. So if you get a mental health resource into the White House, one, it destigmatizes mental health issues around the country because we all have struggles. We'd all benefit from having some sorts of resources. But two, in real terms, the chief of staff with a mental health resource, if they notice someone is stressed out and struggling, they can say, hey, you should probably see that person. And then the person will be like, I don't need to see that person. And it'll be like, well, turns out, like, you know, we all have to see that person periodically. And so then if the psychologist then says, like, look, this particular person is struggling in a particular way, then you can start trying to make moves. Because one of the things that you can't have is you can't have this sort of Superman, Superwoman culture where like everyone like pretends to be superhuman, and then you wind up with real problems and mistakes being made and decisions being made that shouldn't have been made.
And certainly we see the president these days aging in office quite a bit, from George W. Bush to President Obama. And although President Trump has done a pretty good job of upkeep, I guess.
That's because his hair's not real.
Oh. Let's talk about gun violence. What are your plans to reduce gun violence in this country?
I mean, it's a complicated problem. So I think that guns should be treated similarly to automobiles, that we have testing and licensing for automobiles because they can kill people. Firearms can also kill people, so we should take their ownership very, very seriously. That said, there are 300 million firearms in this country owned by citizens, and there's no realistic way that you can reduce that number dramatically in a short period of time. So a lot of the investment that we should make is around things like mental health resources and things to keep people stronger, particularly in the school environment. Because many schools, there's a troubled boy, and everyone kind of knows the boy is troubled, but then no one wants to raise the alarm about it. So again, my brother's a psychologist, and he knows that if you have adequate resources, then you can hopefully preempt some of these situations before they become dangerous.
So what do you do, though, if you're working around the Second Amendment? And this is getting down to a lower level than perhaps the president is responsible for, but what do you do about that troubled boy?
Well, the hope is that if people feel comfortable that there's a resource there and that we listen to our children in that case, where the children says, hey, it seems like that boy is struggling, first we need to create a culture that acknowledges struggle. It can't be that if someone says, like, look, you're struggling, that's somehow stigmatized and marks you in a negative way. And then second, that you have real resources at work to try and intervene and improve and support that young person, generally a young boy, because we know that young boys are much more likely to inflict gun violence on their peers than others.
Let's jump back into the tech conversation. What do you think about net neutrality, and why should that issue matter to people who don't know what it is?
Yes. So the simplest way to think about net neutrality is, should big companies pay to have better internet access than others? If you think that's a bad idea, then you're for net neutrality. I'm for net neutrality. I think big companies have enough advantages without paying for faster internet access for their stuff. I'm pro net neutrality. It's the least we can do. Even with net neutrality, there are massive advantages for the biggest players.
In terms of the regular person, though, why should they care about this issue?
Well, for the regular person, the question is whether you want a level playing field online for vendors, for people that are trying to reach you, for content providers. And so naturally, if you were getting better speeds from certain providers, then you would start using them more, and it would consolidate more power in the hands of the largest companies.
Another social media question coming in, this one from Andy. So this is a little pointed. He says, so I get $1,000 a month for busting my butt at work, and somebody else gets $1,000 a month for not working. Am I understanding this correctly?
Well, if you're busting your butt at work, presumably they're paying you for that. So you're getting $1,000 a month for being a citizen of the richest, most advanced country in the history of the world, and whatever your employer is paying you. So the incentives are perfectly aligned because you keep every dollar. And then the person who's not working is getting $1,000 a month, but then they're looking at you coming home from work and saying, wow, like, you can do more, maybe I should get myself a job. So the biggest misconception about the freedom dividend is that it's somehow going to mitigate work. It's not. It's going to create tens of thousands of new jobs right here in New Hampshire and millions around the country. Because you know, if you were getting an extra $12,000 a year, how much of that's going to be spent right here in your community? Most of it. Like tutoring, food for your kids, car repairs you've been putting off, the occasional night out. It stays here in New Hampshire. Some of it goes up to Jeff Bezos and the gang, a little bit. You know, you'll do some Amazoning. But most of it stays right here. And that's going to be true for that gentleman's community as well. He's going to get the money from his job and the money from the dividend.
We should point out that you already are conducting your experiment here in New Hampshire. You have a family in Goffstown who's receiving $1,000 a month, and the way you've done that is you're actually just paying them yourself to avoid any campaign finance issues. When you do that, are you keeping track of what they do, or are you just saying, here's the $1,000, it's yours, don't... I guess I'm trying to figure out if you're trying to figure out if they're successful with that money.
It's very much the latter. I'm not even sure they've spent the first $2,000 that they've gotten. And if they don't, that's great. If they spend it on something that makes their lives better, also great. So it's the Fossey family in Goffstown, New Hampshire. And I'm doing the same thing for a family in Iowa. And here's what's inspirational is that a couple in Georgia was so inspired by my campaign that they're now giving $1,000 a month to a family in South Carolina that they've never met. Because they know that that's the right thing to do. We can improve Americans' lives very, very quickly. And so I'm not checking in on the Fosseys at all. Whatever they do is going to be great.
Let's take on an issue that is a hot button one here in New Hampshire.
I will say I kind of know where the money's going to go. It's going to go to Janelle's college tuition bills. I mean, truth. Like, you know, you've got a kid in college. We all know how crazy expensive that is. So that's where the money is going, I'm sure.
Let's talk about an issue very important in New Hampshire right now, the legalization of marijuana. We see the rest of the New England states moving in this direction. New Hampshire is still in the thick of the debate. Where do you stand on legalization and also medical marijuana?
I'm for the full legalization of marijuana and removing it from the federal controlled substance list. It's better for managing pain than, for example, opiates, less dangerous. We still need to regulate it. You know, you can have something be legal and regulated. But to me, it's clear that our administration of the criminalization of it has not been equitable, and we should just legalize it fully.
Let's talk a little bit about environmental policy. We haven't gotten to too much yet in this hour. How would you plan to use all of your friends in tech, all of this AI, all of these great things that are happening, even automation? How do you apply that to the problem that we have of our persistent Superfund sites here in New Hampshire that are polluting drinking water, creating health problems?
Yes, I wish there was a tech solution. There might be at the margins. But we definitely need to do much, much more to police Superfund sites and generally tie corporate incentives to our air and water. So right now the problem is that these companies are making a cost-benefit analysis, and they're saying, well, if it pays to pollute, then that's what I'm going to do. So we have to make it much, much more costly for them to pollute with a carbon fee and dividend system, and then channel those resources towards making it harder and harder for companies to cut corners.
On climate change, how do you plan to solve the problem in America while still allow the developing the world to develop and making sure that they're not putting too much carbon in the atmosphere as well?
So this is the harsh truth about climate change and global emissions. The United States is only 15% of global emissions. So even if we were to go really extreme and cut our emissions significantly, it might cut global emissions by 5%. The 4 warmest years in history have been the last 4 years. We are at this point on the curve towards a warming planet. And it's not like if we all of a sudden start recycling diligently that it's going to start cooling again. So this is something where technology will come into play. We need to start trying to first invest in our infrastructure to make us more resilient and sustainable. And you can see that around the country that there are floods and natural disasters that are dangerous to people in part because our infrastructure is failing. But then we need to try and invest in reversing some of the most severe effects. And so if we can somehow get carbon out of the atmosphere and find ways to sequester it, then that's the direction we should go in. And that's where technology can help. But we have to start being honest with ourselves about the fact that we are not the world. Like if we reduced our emissions, that would help, but it would not solve the problem entirely.
We've got time for one last question here, and we've exhausted the room, and so I'm filling in here. But let's talk about the voting process.
I can't believe it.
You want people to be able to vote on their smartphones. How do you prevent interference when we know that so many apps have already gained access to our phones? How do you prevent someone who wants to vote on their smartphone from having their vote interfered with?
So you would not move towards smartphone voting until the technology was ready for prime time, which right now it is not. But there are technologies that are on the table using something called the blockchain that you could trust intrinsically because it's something called a public ledger, and you can't tamper with it. So everyone can see it and you can't tamper with it. And so then you could vote on your smartphone and you could enable a much more powerful democracy. Because right now, the other thing, I would make Election Day a national holiday. I mean, how is it not? So we need to empower voters in different ways. But it does not make sense as a modern society that we can bank online and we can pay our parking tickets online, but then we have to stand in line and pull levers on these machines that are not tamper-proof either. I mean, like, if you move towards a voting system that we can actually trust, that would be the win, and that's the vision. But you don't make that move until the technology is ready.
I think you're going to have a very fun conversation with Bill Gardner at some point. Before we go, you went to Phillips Exeter Academy here in New Hampshire.
Yes, I did.
What is your fondest memory of the Granite State, having spent a formative part of your youth here?
I learned to ski as a junior in high school, and I'd never skied before. And then there was like a ski trip at Exeter, and then I was like, I'm going to learn to ski. And so like I got on that bus, and it was a painful day. It was a very painful day. But then I was very proud of myself that I managed to catch up to my friends and go down the slopes by the end of the day. I just spoke at my old high school 2 weeks ago, and I have to say it was really heartwarming to be back. I still have friends here because many of my friends' parents still live here.
Well, you took your bruising on the ski trail. Hopefully the campaign trail treats you a little bit more nicely.
Yeah.
Andrew Yang, thank you so much for participating in conversation with the candidate. Thank you so much to our wonderful studio audience and the town hall questions. We very much appreciate it. Of course, thank you to our audience for watching on WMUR.com and on our mobile app. Next week, John Delaney, the former Maryland congressman, will be our next guest on Conversation with the Candidate. But thank you for watching and have a great night.
Thank you.
Well done.